Yes, yes, team. Welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today we have a gent called Tanner Chidester. He's dialing in from Miami today. He's the founder and CEO of Elite CEOs. He's turned over $70 million in over 4 years in those businesses. And really, he's a really interesting dude. I've had quite a few really positive referrals from Tanner, from people for Tanner. And I've been looking forward to getting him on the pod. Tanner, mate, thank you so much for making time to jump onto the TMB
Yeah, man.
podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I if you had any bad referrals, we'll keep those private. But dude, I'm glad a few people said some good things. That's a positive. That's positive. That's good.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So, what is it you actually do, mate? For people that are going in and going, "Who's this Tanner dude?"
Yeah. Well, so I started off in the fitness industry. So about 20 from 12 to 22, I was all focused on sports, American football, and 22 to 25, I was really struggling to build a fitness company. But that's where I started. And I started off building, it was called Fit Warrior. And at 25, I finally figured some stuff out. I did 1 million. Next year, I had a lot of trainers ask me for help. And that actually, I started a second business called Fitness CEOs, which was just business consulting for trainers. That did 10 million. And then the third year, I built Elite CEOs. And that did 15. And that's more, it's still fitness, but we also get people outside of fitness. And then yeah, I mean that's I obviously give more context, but that was it in a nutshell. And what I do now is mostly elite CEOs. So that's how it kind of progressed.
Amazing. And do you guys work mainly one to one? Do you work in a group setting? Is it a mixture of both?
Yeah, it's hybrid. So a lot of one to one, very heavy one to one with some group elements, so Facebook group calls, stuff like that. But definitely a very heavy one to one. I don't know, over the years, I guess my coaching experiences, I just said, hey, gotta do one to one. It's better for most people. I think also it's just most people need it, beginners specifically. They just need a lot of help, a lot of attention.
Mhm.
And yeah, but it's a hybrid model, you could say, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So, look, I'm going to come straight out the bat. What's the context we need about Tanner's childhood that provides the context and sets the scene for? Well, this is how I went from being a child drinking his chocolate milk to yeah. So I've built empires of tens of millions of dollars and doing all of this. What do we need to know about that kid?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a very religious household, very conservative. I had four sisters, two brothers. I'm the oldest boy. And so I actually grew up really with my sisters. And I don't know, for better or worse, my dad let them, abuse me with tea parties and dresses. And I mean, it was child abuse for sure. Should have called protective services. No, I'm just kidding. But, I just was a strange kid, I guess you could say, because that's all I knew, and I didn't have an older brother. And so when I say strange, I would just go to school. It was a little more on the soft side, a little more emotional. I got made fun of a lot. And so around 12, that's sixth grade in the States, I just wanted to start going to the gym so I could beat the kids up. That was really my motive. And so my mom started, she didn't know that. She just thought I wanted to get in shape, but she started dropping me off at the gym before school to get in shape. And I would go and do that. And about 3 months after that, I was going through puberty and obviously, newbie gains. I started getting quite a bit of size, especially because it's just no one else was lifting weights, right? And I remember just getting tons of compliments. And I was like, man, like, this is nice. Like I put in work, I get a result, and
Mhm.
people like me more. And so I started going, and then I also noticed I did really well in sports. So I started going extremely hard at sports. I think something that really benefited me was my father. My father is probably one of the hardest workers I know. At the time, I thought that was just what every guy did. But as I got older, I obviously realized,
Mhm.
most people are lazy. And he instilled quite a bit of drive in me. I remember when I was 12, I went to a football practice, American football, and I would get last place in almost every sprint. And he was never there. And finally, he came to pick me up, and he's watching. He's like, son, like, why aren't you running hard? And I said, well, I'm tired. And I genuinely meant it from like, yeah, if you're tired, you run slow. And he looked at me just almost with this puzzled look and said, okay, well, so what? And I was like, I literally was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you run hard no matter what. And I remember the very next practice, I started getting first or second every time. And my dad just always like taught me that you work hard no matter what, and that's how you're successful. And so I think a lot of that carried over into my business mindset. I've done a lot of hard things, that I'd say most people will never or can't do. And it's really kind of helped me. So I think in my childhood, being bullied really gave me a kind of a chip on my shoulder. And then I think my father, just with his level of expectations and how a man should act, really gave me that drive to push through and do a lot of hard things. And that, later in life helped me a lot in business. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sports will do that, and same with me. My dad used to work fucking hard. He works in a factory, so he'd be doing 10 to 12 hour shifts, coming home covered in grease.
Mhm.
That's just what you did. And like you, I was a little bit shocked when I got into the real world. So I spent 6 years in software sales in London before I went into what I do now, and I was like, there's a lot of people that don't work that hard. Oh shit! Yeah, I've just got to work hard, and that's an advantage. But as you know, as you go through the levels, there comes a point where everybody works hard. Like that's not your unique winning. That's not your unique winning piece. Like everybody can work hard. So when you look back at that child that worked fucking hard with a big chip on his shoulder to where you are now, do you still have that chip on that shoulder? Do you still have that relentless, ruthless fucking I'm working? Or has that started to mellow out with a bit more experience and a bit more time?
I still have it. I think to a degree. I think I've definitely gotten over, anyone who's quote unquote wronged me, because that will drive you until you hit the goal, and then I think it falls off. Mostly because you lose touch with those people, or they weren't thinking about you anyways. You realize it doesn't really matter. But no, I mean, I work a lot and I enjoy it. And I think it's more around being my best self, around truly like trying to become the best person I can be in all levels: fitness, wealth, relationships. Um, I think there's times where I do have a chip on my shoulder because I want to prove that I can do it. And when you do hard things, most people say you can't do that because it's hard. And so I will use that at times, which is more of like a dark energy. But I think it has mellowed out some in the sense that I've realized I just love business. I love pushing myself. I want to be the best I can be. And so it's not even necessarily to prove it to anyone else, it's to prove it to myself. Because the reality, and I've sat with this for a long time, is that one day I will die and people will forget about me and no one will remember me. And so you really have to sit with that and go, is this what I want to do? Or is this what I want to do for others' approval? Because others' approval is a waste of time. It really is. So I think when I sat with that thought, it was after my first $1 million month. I was sitting in a massive penthouse in Miami, just got a new Lamborghini SVJ, like dating a bunch of girls, just like feeling like the man, right? And I just remember I sat there and I was like, man, I don't feel very happy.
Hmm.
I don't feel what I thought I would feel when I hit this level. Because that was my goal. Dude, at the time, like $1 million in a month was like I was a billionaire. Like that was the, apex of life. And then I sat there and I said, you know what? As big as I am now, like no one even knows who I am. Like I'm a speck. And I was like, Mark Zuckerberg, I bet there's people who don't know who he is. As crazy as that sounds, like I bet you there is, because there's some people who don't know the national anthem, right? And so I just had to sit in that feeling, and go, fuck, like if I am that insignificant, there's nothing I can really do to ever amount to be that big, then what's the point of life and all. And it took me down this a very like introspective path, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah. I call that the now what moment. I see this with many clients that reach out to me. They're like, Kieran, I've reached all my goals. I'm actually further ahead than I thought I should be. And I've ticked all the boxes. Yeah, there's an emptiness or something's not quite right. Like, what is that about? And the point that you made there was spot on, which is external validation and looking for approval from the outside world. And the more time you spend doing that, the more time you spend away from your purpose, away from why the fuck you were put here on the planet. And I see it time and time again. Was that the moment for you where you let go of that need for external approval, or did that come a little bit later?
It was around that time. I mean, I've talked about this on other podcasts, but I started going to a therapist, which I am like the not anymore, but I was probably the farthest away from a mindset pro guy you could find. I mean, I was just like, stop being such a, P and B and like get up. And I wouldn't say that like publicly, but in my head, that's where I was. And I started going to therapy. I started seeing a therapist, and I got frustrated because I felt like I'd go to ask questions or get answers, and she like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, no, you tell me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm coming to you, you know? And I was going down a really dark path and just started feeling, what's the point of all this? It doesn't mean anything. And I remember talking to Alex Hermosi, who most people will know at this point, and he reached out to me and called me randomly, and we were talking, and he's like, yeah, but dude, like, does there have to be a point? I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, what if there is no point? I was like, what if you just like it? What if you just want to do business because you enjoy it? What if there doesn't have to be a point? I was like, fuck. I was like, that is a good point.
Mm.
And I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I do think that was a more helpful thought for me than going, well, what about this? And does this have meaning? And if it doesn't have meaning, why do I do it? And I think sometimes that can take you in a very dark place in life. And some people will reach for religion, some will reach for, spirituality, some will just say, hey, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in anything. And that to each their own. But I think for me, I got to a healthy place of like, I just want to be the best I can be. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be the best you can be. And just align with people who see the world the same way as you do
Yeah.
versus, people who want to do other stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just to me. I think a lot of the best things in life come on the other side of discipline. Pretty much everything that we value or admire in life comes from discipline. And so, yeah, hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because on the therapy piece anyway, because I kind of look at therapy as more 0 to 1. It's like I'm really struggling here, man. I'm really struggling to move and do anything, even brush my teeth. Or it's more around the mental health aspect, more like a coach that coaches general population clients to do like a bit of fat loss. Whereas this is where we've carved our own little niche, which is mental performance. So mental performance is 1 to 100. Our clients are smashing it. All of our clients are doing pretty fucking well. But when they go to a therapist, there's almost like this cognitive dissonance. It's like, well, how does that make you feel? It's like, I don't give a fuck how that makes me feel because I've got shit to do. I want to get better. I want to get faster. And
Mhm.
that's where I think therapy, mindset, performance coaching is where it can get all a little bit messy. Positive psychology is everything is awesome. Let's focus on the future. Everything is great. Therapy is more, well, let's talk about the past. Let's dig up some of those memories, man, and let's see how that made you feel. And that doesn't necessarily help high performance and ambitious minds. Kind of what we've done is we've bridged that gap. We go into the past to unlock emotions that are being experienced in the present that are stopping you from moving forward towards your future. And then we help you redesign a future that's worth working towards. We design an individual that is living that future, and then you put in the work in the present in order to get there, if that makes sense. So I'm really glad that you brought that up because for the ambitious mind, therapy doesn't really work because it's like, oh, I don't care how that makes me feel. Like, what do I do
Solutions,
with
right?
this?
Solutions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And for us, it's about listening to the individual and going, okay, well, is there a little bit of fear that's burning up extra calories that it doesn't need to be burnt up? Is there an element of doubt or guilt or shame or what is it? And how can we get that individual to move through that quicker so they can also move forward? And that's something that we see a lot with high performers is they get frustrated with therapy. So then they throw all of it out the window. They're like, well, fucking, it's a load of shit. When
Mhm.
actually there are other ways of getting there. So when you look at performance for you now, is performance more focused on outcomes? Is performance more focused on the day-to-day tasks and the moments? How do you look at performance in your world? Or is it a
Yeah, it's
mixture of
all
both?
no, it's all input. I mean, it has to be all input because the output doesn't matter. I'll give you an example. One of the things I'm the most proud of in my entire life was when I didn't make the NFL. And the reason I was the most proud is I literally, when I say I did everything I could do, I literally did everything I could do. I hired running coaches, weightlifting coaches. I worked with the weightlifting coach who coaches the USA Olympic weightlifting team. I worked with NFL running backs. I did all the two a days. I did all the summer camps. I was perfect on my diet. I didn't drink, I didn't party, didn't do drugs. I barely dated, man. I mean, and a lot of people look at that and go, "Oh, like that's so over the top." But when I didn't make the NFL, I knew that there were guys who didn't make it and they sat there and man, what could I have done if I did everything I could have done? And that pain and that thought will live with you forever into eternity, right? If there's an afterlife or whatever, like it will stay there and it will haunt you. And so for me, I walked away And at least with the skills I had, maybe if I had had a different mindset or something, right? But with the skills I had as a, average genetic white guy, like I went far, and it was such a great feeling. And then I hit a million in a month, and I don't know, it didn't feel the same. It really didn't. Like the destination did not feel how I thought. So I think you have to, it's fine to have goals, but it's more about the inputs. Is like, if you want a six pack, are you focusing on the inputs? Do you eat on a healthy diet? Do you wake up early? The output will happen. And a lot of times in business, I think the same thing can happen. Like if you genuinely are constantly, okay, I want to be a billionaire, and then you can backtrack that and focus on the inputs, then you can be it. I just think a lot of people, they think that the destination will matter, and it doesn't. So you have to really enjoy the journey, the inputs, because that's all you're gonna have. The destination lasts literally a day. And then after 2 or 3 days, guess what happens? Dopamine goes back down to normal, and you got to do something new. And so it's got to be, for me, it's just an endless cycle of trying to be the best I can be, because there is nothing else. And I think hard work is where you get a lot of fulfillment, where you just lose yourself in trying to do the very best you can at whatever the hell it is. And if that's like making gardens, great. If it's not, great. There's a episode on the Huberman Lab podcast with a guy named Paul Conti, and he said something. He has a word for it, but he calls it like a regression or something. I don't know. I'm not saying the word right, but he talks about it's the way relationships work and how you get fulfillment is not constantly just getting everything you want. It's literally just like two people trying to like work together to be the best they can be in the relationship. And I think that can go in business too. It's very
Yeah.
interesting. So
Yeah. You know, there's a couple of things to pull out of that. I really like the piece about the journey. So have you read Steve Jobs' biography, the one with
yes.
the white cover?
Yeah.
You know, you know what? I remember I always read an autobiography of a business leader or an entrepreneur before bed. For some reason, that relaxes me, fascinates me. And same with sports people too. And I remember I'm a night owl, so I work till about 1:30 a.m. Don't get to sleep till about 2:30 a.m. And it's like 2 a.m. and I'm just about to put the book down and finish it and go to sleep. And he talks about when he had a conversation with his one of his HR managers that had followed him like through all the various different evolutions of Apple. And he was on his deathbed, and she's asking him like, "So what was the biggest one? Like, what was the biggest win?" And he turns around and he goes, "Fuck the wins. It wasn't when I sold. It wasn't when we launched the iPhone. It wasn't when we launched the Mac. It wasn't any of those things. What I learned was." I've got it written on the wall here. The journey is the reward. The journey in between the milestones is the reward. And I think where a lot of entrepreneurs and coaches get stuck is they fucking hate the journey. Like they actually hate the journey, and they're probably coaching the wrong clients, or they're in the wrong business model, or whatever. Like, don't get me wrong, the journey will be hard, but you got to have joy in the day to day things that you're doing, and that's how you stick the journey. And for me, that was like, it sounds so cliche, sounds so pithy. It sounds like, oh, come on, man, like that couldn't have blown your mind. But if Steve Jobs can sit there and literally change the way in which humans interact with technology on a daily, moment by moment basis, and he's like, yeah, wasn't any of the achievements. It was the journey itself, and it's falling in love with the journey and falling in love with the inputs. That
It's,
is where performance lives.
yeah, it's like one of my good friends, he said something, I'm going to not quote it perfectly, but, you know, like easy, what was it? It's like easy tasks, like ordinary, or it's like ordinary tasks, ordinary outcomes, hard tasks, extraordinary outcomes, right? And so a lot of times we want this extraordinary outcome, but we complain about the prerequisite, which is hard task, hard shit, right? And I that always helps me when I'm in a tough spot, because I just sit there and go, this is the price that I've chosen to pay to get to where I want to go, versus, oh, fuck this and that, and trust me, there's days, man, where I do not handle it the best. But at the end of the day, like I wouldn't trade it. Like I want the hard days. I want the struggle. I want to fight, and that's, it's not, it's hard to, I don't know, like when everything's going smooth all the time, like it's not really that great. Like you need to like struggle, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, you need enough struggle where, I look at business almost the same as bodybuilding, right? You need enough stress, enough tension on the muscle in
Mhm.
order to build it. Too much, you're going to get injured. Not enough, it's not going to do anything. It's going to get fat, it's going to get weak. And it's the same in business. I also think you have to create a relationship with getting a commercial kick in the nuts. That's almost like you kind of enjoy it. It's like, oh, that's fucking really hard. But you know what? Like, fair play. I talk a lot about scar tissue, particularly with younger coaches that join the program. It's like, no, every single setback is scar tissue. It's building up that resilience. It's building up that experience. And as much as it hurts, you kind of have to sadistically fall in love with the pain. Like, yeah, look, this fucking sucks right now. But in the long run, the compound effect of learning this lesson now is going to be so powerful. And I think the more that you can learn to build up that resistance to failure, resistance to setbacks, resistance to the commercial kick in the nuts, and go, you know what, fucking bring on more. Like, I've got this, and really backing yourself in those moments. That's where the magic happens. That's where the lessons happen. Whereas if you're riddled with self doubt and you have a belief of I'm not enough, or I'm always going to fail, well, your brain is going to look for evidence as to why you're not enough and why you're not going to fail. And it's when you can disassociate your identity from the outcome. How much money you make has got nothing to do with your self-worth as an individual. And that individual is inherently powerful because it doesn't matter what's happening in their outside world. They know they're enough and they can handle it. Whereas if you're stuck on the, well, it's this much in sales, or it's this much in client results, or it's this much in physique, and you essentially give away your power to the outside world. So it's cultivating an internal world where, who was it? Les Brown, big American motivational speaker. I don't know if you know that guy. He came to London when I was, he's been speaking a long time. I think I was like 16. I went to speak, and he said, if you can conquer the enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. And that stuck with me. And I was always thinking, how can I conquer the enemy within? And it's true. If you can conquer that internal side, build up that resistance to failure, and disassociate your self-worth from your outcomes, and just go, well, I'm enough. I'm still going to work hard, but I'm enough, and that's fine. Well, you'll find that the external stuff just ruffles your feathers a little bit less, and you can get more stuff done.
I agree, 100%. Yeah, you're spot on with that.
You said something earlier about sports that really hit home for me. So similar to you, I got to a decent level. So I was an international boxer, managed to make the England team, and I retired in a pretty bad way. I lost my spot on the England team. So I'm 5'8". I was 56 kilos, and I was huge for my weight. I would walk around, all my opponents would like come up here. I had this kind of weird giant complex, even though I'm a short dude. That's huge for the weight, and everyone's like, "Yeah, Kieran's huge. Kieran's huge." So I kind of built this weird giant complex. But I ended up with an eating disorder, anxiety, depression, and trying to take my own life. But the one thing that I did learn, just like you said there, which was, you know what, I couldn't have given any more. By the time I was 17, I'd sold $500,000 worth of software for a company from a mentor that was mentoring me. I left that to go full time into boxing because boxing's a young man's sport. If you're going to go into Olympic boxing, an Olympic boxer peaks at 24. So you got to make it by 20, 21, 22, and it all come crashing down. But I do look back at that moment and go, you know what? I did exactly the same thing as you. Nutritionists, strength and conditioning coaches. I was training 2-3 times a day. I was on it. And the thing I learned from that, which was don't die wondering. And if you're listening to this now and you're like, oh, should I go all in? Should I not? You will kick yourself if you don't do it. Because you probably got loads of friends from your football days. And I got loads of friends from boxing days. They're like, thing is, I wish I went all in. I wish I didn't taken the job and played it safe. And if you're somebody that's playing it safe or playing not to lose, like, you've got to go all in. You've got to give it a go. Because the worst that happens is it doesn't work out and you find another way. But it was really interesting.
And no one cares. I mean, most people, they don't do it because of fear of what other people think, but no one cares anyways. That's the irony. You think they do, that they don't. So really, it's not doing it for no reason. I mean, there's nothing to lose because when you die, I mean, that was like, I really sat with that. I was like, man, like when I die, no one will think about me. Even now, no one thinks about you. So you're just, it doesn't matter how big you get, you will be forgotten. People will forget about you. And so you have nothing to lose.
So nothing. Existentially freeing, isn't it? Yeah. I had a moment in Subway. I remember I had to tell my 2 best friends I wasn't going to fight anymore. I was so nervous. And I was like, I'm got outside the Subway. Guys, I need to tell you something. I was like, what? Yeah, I got an eating disorder and I'm not going to box anymore. Like, game over. And they went, so does that mean we can have a Subway or not? You fuck. They did not care. They were like, for me, I've spent a decade up until this point starving myself, like fighting, bleeding, traveling, all of this stuff. And they're like, well, can we have the Subway or not? Like, it's true. It's really true. And the perception that you you build, and it comes down to social acceptance and the evolution of the human species. I need to be accepted by the tribe in order to survive. That's not the case anymore. And you get caught up in the perception of what other people will think, but it's true. The existential hammer being dropped is no one gives a fuck. Do what you want. It's a beautiful thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think for me, like you looked at like Betty White died earlier this year. No, she hasn't been brought up again. Kobe Bryant, he's been dead a couple years. Gets brought up once a year on ESPN.
Yeah.
Um, it just, I mean, you just got no shot. It doesn't matter. I mean, even if you think about like, even Genghis Khan and those guys. I mean, they get mentioned here and there, but it's, oh yeah, Genghis Khan took over the world. Yeah, I mean, like what do people really know or like remember about him? Not much. So I just think if it's like that for most people, then man, yeah, it's gonna be tough. It's tough because at the end of the day, I mean, you just years and years and years go by and you just gets farther and farther away. I just don't think most of us have a shot.
Mm. There's an existential release from we are admittedly a speck of dust on the side, or a speck of dust on this planet, which this planet is a speck of dust amongst the universe. And when you can start to think like that, well, you just got a lot less to lose. Because I think too many people get stuck in playing to win and then they forget and they play to not lose. They experience some success and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't want to lose this, or oh, I don't want to look like a failure. I don't want to look like an idiot. Or what if, what if, what if, what if, what if? For me, I did a ayahuasca retreat in Peru 6 years ago, maybe
Mhm.
7 years ago, and that experience was like it completely changed my life. Life was never the same after that. But through that experience, I kind of recognized just how small we are, like how big and powerful and important we think we are. But in that moment, I realized you're both the king or the queen of your kingdom or queendom, but you're also nothing. And having that spectrum of I am the creator of my own reality, but I am also inherently nothing, it created this level of just there's no fucks to give about perception or about external validation. And for me, that completely shook me to the core. Have you found, and you've had any experiences like that? Because when I speak to people and they start talking about, well, we're just a speck of dust amongst the universe, usually there's something behind that. Have you had a moment where you've kind of gone, yeah, I am just a speck of dust on the universe?
I mean, I had an experience this year. I did. I've never done any like plant medicine. This year I did ayahuasca, bufo, and I did ibogaine. All three. Ayahuasca was an amazing experience for me. I've heard some scary things about it before, which kind of I was like, I don't know, but it was a really good experience for me. And bufo was also a great experience. I like those best. Ibogaine I didn't like as much, but yeah, I mean, I think. There's just numerous thoughts I've had where I've just realized I'm not that important. Even sometimes where I'll go places and there's big crowds, like you go to like a football game or baseball or basketball or whatever, and you just see people and you're never going to see them again. And it's just so many people, and you get so caught up in your world and what you're doing, and you just realize, even at what you consider a high level, you're just not really that high. Uh, you know, I don't know. I mean, other than that, I just think it's more just realizing that even some of the most influential people on earth, when it's all said and done, like no one is still going to care. And that just gives me a lot of freedom to just do as I choose and do as I please and not worry about other people's judgments because it's not their life and they're not going to think about me anyway. So why would I think about what they think about it? I don't know. It just goes back to the same thing. I just always go back to the same thought that I think about the most influential people and that I haven't really thought about them at all. And so why would I expect other people to think about me? I just don't think it's realistic. I think when you just realize that, it gives you a lot of freedom to just go do what you want to do. And I think that's the whole point is just go do whatever it is you want to do as hard as you can do it. And that will be satisfying in the end.
Yeah. So a lot of people will be looking at Tanner and be going like, yeah, but he's nailed it now. Like surely he's like this sort of Zen monk and he doesn't struggle with this stuff and he's achieved everything that he wanted. So he just must have it nailed. He must have it sussed. What do you find difficult for where you're at right now on a mental and emotional perspective? What resistance comes up for you?
I just think when you have all your needs met, so like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have all your needs met, and then you don't like need to do anything, and then trying. I think sometimes like making sure you stay motivated, and the motivation is from the journey, right? The input, not the output you're looking for. Because I think society is very driven for outputs, right? Like you do this, you get that, etc.
Mm.
And you can get like it's not good not to have goals. It's not good to not be driven. It's not like every time I've had that in my life's gotten worse. Every time I'm not driven, every time I'm not focused, my life's gotten worse. And so I think just the hardest part is more when you don't have to work for money and you have to make it about something else. That took time for me because really in the beginning when you're just trying to hit X amount of money, it's like that's the driver. It's like, well, I got to hit this number so I can retire. And then when you're able to retire, I mean, once you're retired, you're retired. So it's like, yeah, you can make more, but it doesn't really. I mean, it doesn't change my life. Like I don't care about fancy cars and clothes. And I mean, I buy all my clothes from this website. It's like $7 a shirt and stuff. Like because it's a losing. It's like there's no point. Like I don't see the relevance in trying to like appease or please other people. So that's the thought I have the most often is, or like I struggle with is just continuing to drive because I know that that's like usually the best way for fulfillment. I think every time I've gotten lost in like pleasure seeking activities, that's taken me down a dark path versus like
Mm.
focusing on becoming my best self and like trying to help others and try to have
Yeah.
good relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like the now what moment. I was like, okay, well, I've done it now. Now what? And there's a few things in there that's quite interesting. One is there's a boxing phrase you probably heard, which is it's really hard to get up at 6 in the morning when you're waking up with silk sheets and it's nice and warm, and you know you got the supermodel girlfriend next to you, and it's like, right, how do I really want to get up and fight? And then you got the underdog, the contender coming through. He's like, oh, I got to get my first title, and that's always the dance of boxing. And you see champions coming towards the end of their reign, you see the underdog coming through, and that's like the cyclical nature. And it sounds like you're in that place where it's like, okay, well, fuck, what is the driver? What is the point? Why am I here? And what am I
Yeah.
going to do?
I
Um,
think some of it is just like the point is to stay in the game, right? So, you know, if you're in business, like stay in business. If you're in shape, keep a six pack. If you're in a relationship, stay in the relationship. It's I think that kind of is the point, right? It's like there's not you can't win the game. The way to win is you stay in it. And you stay in it by not losing, right? Or you stay in it by not giving up. And so, but yeah, sometimes I mean it's hard, right? You because you start thinking about what's the point around all this? Is this just a game, or is there, you know, something out there that's like there's a purpose for this? And like everyone's got their answer, but it's still I still think there's regardless if you believe in God, don't believe in God, or an afterlife or whatever. I still think at times it still is you still go okay, but why is if that's true, then why is there that? And you can go
mhm.
down a massive rabbit hole and get very confused and you know have a lot of questions. But I think sometimes it's just bring it back to the basics and just go like I think the point is to be your best self and to stay in the game. And if I ever get overwhelmed with those thoughts, sometimes I'll just take a break and try to like recenter myself because there are days where I think it's normal. You question it, you do that, but every time I've had good things happen in my life, I'm focused. I'm disciplined. I'm focused. I'm on my grind. I'm doing my fitness. I'm doing my business. I'm trying to help people. That's when I've gotten the best outcomes.
Do you think drive is innate, or do you think it's something that you cultivate?
Uh, yeah, I don't think I was born with drive. I definitely think it was my circumstances. In fact, I think scientifically, or maybe statistically is a better way to put it, they find that the most driven people or the most successful people, they have massive insecurity that they're not good enough, but they also have massive belief that they can do it. And I think I got that from my dad, where I was always afraid I wasn't working hard enough, but as I worked hard and I got results, I started having confidence I could do anything I put my mind to. And I think that's a very common trait in successful people, 100%.
Hmm. So I remember I had this chief revenue officer when I was working in London, and he said to me, "Kieran, you," because I was complaining, I was like, "Why? It's like 7 p.m. Why is everyone leaving? Like the US are 4 hours behind us. We've got another 2 or 3 hours of outbound calling. Like we can fucking nail this. What are they doing? And he said, Kieran, the difference is you're driven and they're not. And he believed that was innate. And I kind of sort of went, well, that's obvious, but like whatever. And then another performance coach said it. And then another performance coach said it to me. And then a therapist said it to me. And I couldn't really get it. So I started exploring, okay, well, what on earth is drive? I think the problem we've got in society today is drive is sexy. Ambition is sexy. It's the thing that's glorified now. It's what are you working towards? What are you hustling towards? What if, what if, what if, what if? But I do believe that there are some people that are trying to be driven, but they're not. And on the flip side, there are people that are driven that are trying to slow down. And actually, they don't need to slow down. They actually need to speed up a little bit. So I was always interested to ask my guests, okay, well, where do you think you sit with that? Because there is a lot of evidence to show that there is an inherent level of belief and insecurity from high performers around the world. If you listen to the top athletes, even AJ, when he won a number of different world titles in boxing, he still would beat himself up. He'd be like, I kept dropping my jab. It's like, you just won the fucking world title, dude. Like, enjoy it. It's like, no, but I could have done more. And it's that relentless pursuit for more
Yeah.
and the gap, which can go one of two ways. And in business, because business is an infinite game versus athletics or sport, where it is a very finite game, you've got a career of, 18 to 35 in many different pursuits, depending on where you are. Whereas with business, you can play this game for pretty much the majority of your life. And it's finding that drive and going, okay, well, if I'm going to do this the rest of my life, how do I stay in the game? How do I keep that going? Have you read the book? You got something there?
Well, no, I was just gonna say. I mean, Michael Jordan. I relate a lot to Michael Jordan. I relate a lot to like David Goggins in the sense that all it is most people don't understand what hard work means. They've never actually worked hard. They think they have, but they don't actually. And why I say that is when you've actually worked hard, you realize how much harder you can actually go even past that. And then you go, holy shit, like there are just levels and levels and levels. And if you look at David Goggins' work, that's what he does. He is like the apex of pushing to the limit. Now, I don't get into the stuff he does as much in the sense of I could do that, but I don't like, for me, I'm just like, I don't see the point. Me personally, like, I don't get a lot of fulfillment out of just beating myself senseless physically versus like business. Because to me, business, I'm like, that is more in alignment with like where I see I can help people with like my talents and like change the world and stuff. Like me doing 800,000 push-ups. I get his message and what he's doing, but that to me is just not where I want to spend my time because that's all he does all day, right? So he can't be building these companies and businesses if you're doing that. You got to pick. So, but I've done door-to-door sales and I was a Division I athlete and all this stuff. And I got to some days where I just mentally, it was like my breaking point. Like I just mentally didn't know if I could go 1 second further. And then it was just the thought of like, don't quit, keep going. And then you realize like, holy shit, like you thought this was your level. And then now you're here and then you're here. And a lot of people never get there because they never do anything hard. I mean, they think they have, but they have not. And I think surrounding yourself with people like that who just work really hard and just want to be the best and like constantly push themselves, like that is like, I don't know, that to me is like such a more rewarding feeling and focus than it is to just half-ass stuff or do the bare minimum. It's just, I don't know, it's just not rewarding. It's just not rewarding. And like I get inspired by people who think that way and work that way. Like that's how I want to be remembered. If like if I am remembered, which I probably won't be, is like I'd want to be remembered like that.
Do you believe hard work is enough, or do you think there needs to be an inherent level of talent and ability and skill within an individual?
No, I think hard work is enough. It depends on the level of talent. I mean, or the level of success you're talking about. If you want to be Elon, I think Elon's different. I think if we cracked open his brain, it'd look different. I think if we like looked at Warren Buffett, he's different. But if you work hard, even if you're the least of these skills wise, you will have some level of success. If you don't quit, you will win. The thing is that at some point people do quit and they have to admit they quit. And I think for me, that's always been my thing is like, I just never want to quit. I just like, that's why I can't quit. Like I couldn't quit if I tried because there's just something innately inside me that won't let me. I just can't. I don't know.
Is there a difference for you between quitting and moving on, or are they both the same thing?
I mean, if you're leaving one opportunity for a better one, that's different. But if you're like, I think we all know, like I think we all know if we're quitting or not. If you're leaving, like Warren Buffett talks about, it's not about how hard you row, it's about what vehicle you're in. And as I grew a multi-figure consulting company. That's about where it's going to get in the internet marketing space, right? That's about how big it's going to get. So for me, I'm like, hey, if I start going other directions, does that mean I quit? It's like, no, it's just this is the
Mm.
level that I can get to, and there's better opportunities. So I think that's different than the average person who's like, oh yeah, I tried, this one course and it didn't work. It's like, yeah, you
Yeah.
quit.
Yeah.
You quit. And they're like, no, it didn't. It's just that it's their fault. It's like as soon as you start giving your power away to other people and things, that's how you know you quit. Because you're saying that the reason you moved on is because XYZ happened to you. But it's all in your control. And you can choose to keep moving forward. It's just most people don't. And my story is, I mean, I made $2,000 in my first 3 years of business. When I really started making money was 25, and then I've done 70 million in pretty much, it was 6 years, but pretty much all of it was in four, most of it. But the first 3 years I made nothing, but I just kept going, and so that's why I'm such a believer is that if I had quit, I would have made $100,000 a year as an engineer versus what I make now, which is astronomically higher. So
Mm.
hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, if you don't quit, no matter how low your skill is, you will hit some level of success. It's just the level. Like Elon is different, but you might not be Elon, but I'm not either. And most of us never will be. So it's like, but you will hit some level of success.
Yeah. I think that's the challenge of the world that we have today. Whereas if you think back in, say, the 70s and the 80s, you would compare to the Joneses literally across the street, right? You'd compare to that person. Whereas in today's world, you're looking at these anomalies. You're looking at these sports stars at 20 years old breaking records and earning astronomical amounts of money. Or you're seeing Elon Musk, who's trying to take us to an interplanetary species. And you've got all these various different levels of outliers. But because there's so many outliers across 7 billion people, what happens is you can start to get stuck in comparison. And I see that a lot with coaches. Coaches compare for some reason everything: revenue, physique, material things, or whatever. But when you focus on, well, where do I want to get to? Like, what is a good life for me? And focusing down on those inputs, cutting out all the noise and just doubling down, I think that's really the thing that begins to move. But there's always going to be an Elon in every industry, in whatever there is. And it's getting to that place where it's like, well, I don't need to be an Elon to still live well and still achieve and still do the things I
And
want
it
to
doesn't
do.
matter if you are Elon, it's if you want to try to be Elon. Then all that matters is that you're trying. That's the thing. People don't get it. They think they have to be Elon. It's like you don't. You just if you want to be Elon, all you have to do is try, and the trying will be enough. Because if you really try your best, like your best, like actually your best, like I can't emphasize that enough. Actually, your best. When you die, you'll feel the same. You really will. It's just most people they have no idea what their best is. They have no clue how hard they can actually go. And I think I've felt that a few times in my life, and so that's why I am so driven. Because every time I've worked hard or had a hard day, I'm like, dude, there's you can go more, you can do more, you can be more, and that's why I don't quit because I know like no matter how hard I think I've gone, there's just another level always, and you just all you do is you just work hard enough that eventually this baseline becomes this is your new baseline.
Have you ever worked so hard you crashed the car, you fucked up, and you've gone, push that too hard, and the decisions I made were probably not optimal?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, like any mistakes I made, have probably just come down to how I've handled situations. Like, I don't know if I handled it like improperly, in the sense of like I made the wrong decision, but more of how I talked to that person or maybe the person I'm like letting go, etc. That's more the stuff I regret. Not really the choices I made, but I think it's extremely hard to be a leader, where you can like have empathy for people but also like run an enterprise. Because like I'll be honest, like when you're paying someone money and they're not doing what they should be doing, it is extremely, it's almost like, I almost feel like a betrayal, uh,
Mm.
very deeply. And so it's hard for me at times to, I don't want to say act professionally, but just like come at them with kindness versus more of like, dude, what the F, da da da, this and that, look at this, because ultimately it doesn't really do anything. And you take a very like kind of a hard situation, make it more negative versus positive. But other than that, overall, I'm really happy with how I make decisions. Like, I feel like I'm empowered to make decisions. I do make good decisions. It's more just like maybe how I handle stuff is like the biggest thing I want to like continue to improve on.
Yeah. Sometimes it isn't the decision that's the issue; it's the implementation of the decision. And I've learned that this year as well. Obviously, with team, with clients, it's like the decision was right. The communication of that decision probably needed a little bit of polishing, but that's leadership. Leadership is lonely. Leadership is difficult. If it was easy, everybody would be in these positions, and it's down to you to make those and learn. And you kind of learn. Sometimes you do something, you go, "That's not my style. I think I was tired. I think I was fatigued. I probably was a little bit short, or I need to get better at that." And then there's other times you're like, "No, I nailed that. I nailed that." Look, Tanner, I've deeply enjoyed this conversation, mate. I got one question I ask everyone, and I want you to forget us as an organization, as a brand. But what does the phrase "total mental performance" mean to Tanner? If Tanner had total mental performance, how would he know?
I just think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where most people they don't truly understand how powerful the mind is, and really how the mind kind of controls everything. I'd even say it's your words and then your mind from there, but um, total mental performance to me would just truly be doing your best, like truly doing your best. And there's only a few people who can who probably will die and be able to say they truly did their best, but it really is the best feeling because it's not about the outcome as long as you did your best, because in the end it doesn't matter. That I think it's almost I think it's almost like a trick to the game or like a cheat code where you realize that, well, if none of what I do really matters in the end to other people in the world, then it never mattered the outcome I got. It always mattered what I did, like the inputs. So I guess for me, it would just be someone truly doing their best. And like you and me, everyone, you know what your best is. And a lot of times people fall short from that. And I think if everyone could actually feel that one time in their life, it's an amazing feeling. But
Yeah,
you got to actually do your best. And most
yeah,
people won't.
I love that. I love that. My definition, if we delete TMP as an organization, is the ability to feel any feeling and fucking perform anyway. That's what
Right,
it
you know,
is.
and that, dude, and that actually is such a great definition. Like
Yeah,
that's it. To,
yeah.
to to do what you're supposed to do regardless of your feelings. That's literally it.
Yeah, I have an unfair advantage insofar as I'm doing this stuff every single fucking day, every single minute of the day. But we just had an event in Manchester, England. We had over 120 of our clients in a cinema, and the theme was "You're the hero of your own movie, so start acting like it." And that one slide was the one that everybody took photos of in that cinema. It was TMP is the ability to suffer, feel any feeling, and fucking perform anyway. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. But mate, I've deeply enjoyed this conversation. Where can everyone find you?
Alicios.com is my main site. And then on YouTube, I brought this up on other podcasts, is I'm starting to do like free business sessions in person. And I'm going to post them all on YouTube. And I think it's going to be absolutely fire. And it's going to help a lot of people and it's free. And so I'm hoping a lot of people will get a lot of enjoyment out of that because it's a lot of time and effort to make it. So those two places would be awesome places to connect.
Awesome. We'll put the link in the description, team. Drop Tanner a follow. Tanner, mate, appreciate you. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.